Anti-Israel protests are descending into woke absurdity, a lesson on what peaceful protest means, and a TikToker triggers the fat positivity movement. All that and so much more is coming up on today's episode of Brad vs. Everyone, my new daily series where I take on the craziest ideas from across the internet and across our politics, from a center-right, independent perspective. If you're new here, please do consider subscribing and sticking around. And if you're a returning viewer, don't forget to hit that like button and comment with your thoughts as we go along. I do read the comments, and I pick a couple comments each episode to read and react to on the next one. Before we get into things, a quick announcement. There will not be any Brad vs. Everyone show dropping on Monday or Tuesday of this upcoming week. I'm going to be traveling to attend my sister's college graduation, so blame her. It's your fault that you're not going to get an update and a chance to hang out with this beautiful face. Now, let's head down to UCLA, where the latest campus protests against Israel are descending into woke absurdity. I think what's happening in Gaza right now is horrifying and is clearly a humanitarian crisis. I sympathize with Israel's need to destroy Hamas, but I can completely understand why many people are horrified by what they're doing and the human toll it's taking. And I completely support people's right to make their voices heard and criticize and push back on Israel's military campaign. But these protests and encampments that we're seeing at college campuses across the country aren't actually furthering the cause of the Palestinian people. They're not actually raising awareness against Israel or doing anything like that. They're descending into complete and utter clown shows. Here's a clip from some of the spokespeople of the UCLA protesters that, if I didn't know better, I'd think was parody.
Yeah, I think it's more than divestment as well. I think given the fact that the University of California is founded on colonialism, it's inherently a violent institution. There needs to be an addressment of U.S. imperialism and its ties to the UC system and how it perpetuates war and violence abroad. Not only abroad, but also here, locally. We see this with the brutality, the police brutality that black and brown students face here at UCLA, Arab students, Muslim students, Palestinian students. And I myself have personally been faced those violences that the UC has perpetuated and continues to perpetuate. It's not just a means of divestment, it's a divestment from Zionism. Yeah.
Oh my. I mean, why are they all wearing masks in 2024 outside? At that point, you're just in a cult. Like, you're just signaling your allegiance to a cult. And here's the thing that's so crazy to me, right? They've gone far beyond this cause of just protesting Israel, and now they're claiming that their own university is inherently violent as an institution. So the idea that you're actually, raising support for a cause that's to do with Israel at this point is clearly out the window. You're just totally off the loony bin, off the cliff, and just gone into absolute nonsense territory. And to them, I have a very simple question. If you actually believe that your university is inherently violent as an institution, a truly ridiculous thing to believe, but if you actually hold that belief earnestly, why wouldn't you divest from it by unenrolling? You're forking over thousands of dollars, presumably, to attend this university, and you are funding violence. So you want to complain about the university supposedly funding Israel, although those financial ties are incredibly tenuous and indirect, and there's not much evidence behind most of what they're saying. But you want to complain about that when you actually have it in your ability to stop financing a violent institution immediately in your own life, and you're not taking it. This is deeply, deeply unserious, and it's presenting a clownish image to the world, not helping the cause of the Palestinian people in any way, shape, or form. A journalist covering the UCLA protests wrote, "It is nearly midnight. Temperatures have reached the mid-50s, and yet hundreds of pro-Palestinian protesters have remained seated outside UCLA's Gaza Solidarity encampment, protecting it from law enforcement and counter-protesters." Y'all, when I tell you that mid-50s is not the bar he thought it was, so you mean it's warm? You mean it's camping weather? I mean, maybe they're just spoiled in California, but to a Michigander, the idea that they're like braving the cold in the mid-50s is just laughable. Again, I almost feel bad laughing about this because what's happening in Gaza is so serious and tragic. But these people are turning it into a farce. Who do they think is out there and is seeing this and is compelled by it or wants to side with them in any way? They're also distracting from the serious points that their cause could be making. For example, pro-Israel protesters actually attacked the encampment of anti-Israel protesters at UCLA, harassing them, physically assaulting them, firing fireworks into the encampment. That is totally insane and unacceptable behavior, and they should be raising the alarm about that, not complaining about weather in the 50s or talking about how the University of California system is inherently violent and all this other woke nonsense. I just don't understand how at this point anybody, even an ardent supporter of the Palestinian cause, can look at these protests and think they're helping that cause more than they're hurting it. I mean, at Columbia University, these people are beyond parody, honestly, some of the stuff they're pulling. They took over a building, barricaded themselves in it, and then asked for food to be allowed to be delivered in the name of humanitarian aid. Take a look.
Why should the university be obligated to provide food to people who've taken over a building?
Well, first of all, we're saying that they're obligated to provide food to students who pay for a meal plan here.
But you mentioned that there was a request that food and water be brought in, unless I misunderstood.
To allow it to be brought in. I mean, well, I guess it's ultimately a question of what kind of community and obligation Columbia feels it has to its students. Do you want students to die of dehydration and starvation or get severely ill, even if they disagree with you? If the answer is no, then you should allow basic, I mean, it's crazy to say because we're on an Ivy League campus, but this is like basic humanitarian aid we're asking for. Like, could people please have a glass of water?
But they did put themselves in that very deliberately, in that situation and in that position. So it seems like you're sort of saying, we want to be revolutionaries, we want to take over this building, now would you please bring us food and water?
Nobody's asking them to bring anything. We're asking them to not violently stop us from bringing in basic humanitarian aid.
They're stopping the delivery of food?
We are looking for a commitment from them that they will not stop it
but
violently.
They haven't stopped it yet.
I don't know to what extent it has been attempted, but we're looking for a commitment.
So let's recap the facts of what happened here. At Columbia, these protesters violently overtook and occupied a building, barricaded themselves inside it, and then demanded that people allow food and water to be delivered to them in the name of humanitarian aid, when they could literally just walk to CVS or go to the dining hall at any time, and they have 100% put themselves in this situation. And they're doing this all the while people are actually starving in Gaza. The people they're supposed to be raising the alarm for. Yet these college activists are claiming they need humanitarian aid to be helped in their protests because they're occupying a building. It's beyond parody. It's absurd beyond belief. And it's not just counterproductive at this point. I think that's freaking offensive to the people who are actually in need of humanitarian aid in Gaza. If these clowns actually cared about them, they would pack up and go home. Meanwhile, at the University of Chicago, the encampment they've set up there has put out a list of supplies they need, and it includes some interesting items. They're requesting chapstick, HIV tests, dental dams, and Plan B. For folks that don't know, and I actually had to Google this, a dental dam is like a condom you use on your mouth for oral sex. Yes, these very serious protesters are asking people to send them supplies, including HIV tests and mouth condoms. Again, I just don't see how any of this could possibly be construed as advancing the Palestinian cause or conveying any coherent message at this point, especially when there's so much radicalism and extremism, from anti-Semitism to open support for violent terrorists like Hamas, wrapped up and intermingled with these protests. And I know not all of them believe that. I know not all of them hold those views, but it's mixed in with them, and they haven't distanced themselves from it properly. I don't know, guys. It's just my take, but I think at this point, the best thing they could do would be to stop Stop the drama, stop the woke absurdity, stop calling all the attention to yourself and away from the actual war, the actual conflict, and instead of fundraising for dental dams for your protest encampment, fundraise for supplies for humanitarian aid for the actual people in Gaza or for the Israeli victims of October 7. If you actually want to help people and make a difference, rather than just virtue signal and cause chaos on campus in the name of woke performative activism. But that's just my take. Let me know if you disagree, if you think these protests are accomplishing something somehow. I do want to hear from you, even if you disagree. And don't forget to hit that like button. Now, it's time for DELULU Epidemic, my segment where I spotlight people who are showing they're stupid. This socialist writer is actually claiming that destroying people's property is peaceful protesting. Nathan J. Robinson wrote, "Destroying property is not a peaceful protest. This is wrong. Is a building demolition violent? Is cutting down a tree? Dismantling an air conditioner? All kinds of contradictions follow when you call property damage violence." This has to be the dumbest argument I've seen in a while. Yes, destroying people's property is a form of violence. And the difference between that and the examples you mentioned is consent and ownership. A building demolition, if it isn't violent, if it's ordered by the owner of the property, but if we were to go to your house and demolish it, that would be violent. Unless you're saying you would be okay with that. As Kathy Young pointed out, this is kind of like arguing slashing someone with a knife is violent, but surgery exists. This argument is completely insane, and it's wild that a columnist for The Guardian can't see that. And guys, while I don't encourage anyone to actually do this, I will say I think that Nathan here would feel very differently if it was his property being destroyed. Nathan Robinson, your DELULU is showing. Up next, it's time for Brad vs. TikTok, my segment where I react to the craziest and cringiest things going on the Clock app. Don't forget to hit that like button and consider subscribing and sticking around. And now, let's check out a TikToker who accidentally sent the internet on fire and made fat positivity activists very, very mad. Here's what he had to say that started this shitstorm.
A brand not making your size in something does not give you grounds to talk shit. Degrade the brand. Brands are allowed to want a certain look and image with their products. They are allowed to make things for the people they want to make them for. I've been seeing too many people talking shit recently, and it's me off. People are allowed to have preferences, and brands are allowed to create an image with what they want and have a specific type of person wear what they have. Not everybody needs to be catered to by everything and everyone. And this is a lesson I had to learn when I used to think clothes just weren't flattering. No, babe, the body wasn't flattering. But a lot of brands don't make my size and a lot of shit still. And if a piece of clothing is not flattering on you, it doesn't mean the item or product is not flattering or is not good. It's not made for you. I'm a size 16 shoe. A lot of brands don't make my size. Do I waste my time and lend my energy and focus to what I don't want and what I can't have and attacking brands for not making my fucking size? No. Every single human being is very powerful. You have to be careful with where you put your attention and your focus. For you to stick your attention and your energy on what doesn't work for you, what is not made for you, and what brands don't want you to wear their you're never going to have mental space to think and look for and discover brands that are made for you. You can't keep focusing on what you don't want and find what you do want. Get your fucking attention off of the shit that's not for you and the things you don't like. I'm never going to find my size in shoes that I like if all I'm doing is sitting here crying how most brands only go to a 13. I'm gonna go buy the shoes that go to my size. But key point here, if my focus is nothing but stuck on the brands that don't make my size, I'm gonna feel nothing but frustrated, irritated, singled out, and pissed off. That's a waste of your energy. Being a human being is a very valuable experience and it's a very precious thing. Don't waste your time on not for you. Don't let useless nonsense irritate you.
So if you're wondering what prompted this video, it's an entire genre of TikTok content where fat positivity activists go into stores and then complain and show and yell at them for only having sizes that go up to, for example, a double XL rather than a 5XL or whatever size they are looking for. His delivery was pretty spicy, but I do essentially agree with his point. First and foremost, if I was one of these activists, I wouldn't be getting worked up over the fact that these stores don't carry a 5XL or whatever. I'd be getting worked up about the fact that I need a 5XL. Just from a health perspective, I would be seeking to fix that because it's a dire threat to your health and your life. So I would be really more concerned about that. And it's just not really reasonable to expect companies or mainstream stores to carry sizes and stuff that only a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of the public actually uses. And I really related to this guy's example of foot size because my shoes are a size 14. As you probably know, shoes for men in stores almost always stop at 13. So my whole life, I have always had to order custom shoes online or from special stores that have big shoes, and my choices and my options have been severely limited. And that's over something like shoe size that you can't control, not your body weight, which in almost all circumstances is within your control. But I've never felt like that's somehow these stores doing me dirty or victimizing me. It's always just been kind of a fact that I've dealt with and not really worried about too much because I know there aren't very many people with shoes this size, so it wouldn't be reasonable to expect them to carry every option in a size that almost nobody wears. I keep the same energy for these fat positivity activists, but they don't. They have a very different attitude, and they feel very entitled to be catered to by the entire world. So his video did not go over well. Here's a sample of the response.
This whole Leo Skepi thing, basically he just said, shut up and get on that treadmill if you want to be included, which is genuinely so high school behavior. And him having friends who are plus size or who were plus size, and he had the gall to go, well, move on. Like, this is something that people deal with on a daily basis, not just women, men as well. If I want to talk about a multi-million-dollar designer company not being inclusive, I will, because they don't care about me. And I mean, they don't really care about you, so you backing them up this much is absolutely bonkers. But what do I know? All I know is this is high school behavior, bruh. And telling people to shut up and get on the treadmill if you want to be included is crazy.
It's really a sad day when somebody who used to be directly affected by fat phobia has now forgotten what that feels like. Now that you're on the other side of things, now that you're no longer fat, you then think it's okay to spew fat phobic rhetoric? Everybody deserves to have clothes to wear. I don't understand why you think that this is something that's debatable. Clothes are a basic human necessity.
Finally, someone is standing up for the feelings of corporate brands. Finally! It's been too long. They don't deserve it because of all their feelings and stuff. So, start.
If a brand not making my size doesn't give me grounds to talk shit or degrade them, then why am I still in their mission statement? Why do they call themselves size inclusive, even though they stop at an XXL?
So, as you can tell, these responses are kind of unhinged. They're acting like they're being denied a human right, like, babe, you can order whatever size you need online. It's not that deep that Macy's only carries up to a double XL in person. The only semblance of a point I think these activists kind of have is when they're criticizing brands that say they are size inclusive or have sizes for everyone. Yeah, I mean, maybe then it's fair to expect them to have sizes that go up higher than the norm. At the same time, though, does anyone really interpret those mission statements to mean literally everyone? We have sizes for everyone, no matter how big. Like, there is still a cutoff somewhere. They can't have clothes that accommodate every possible body size. I'm sure they don't carry things that would fit a 7'5" basketball player, right? It doesn't mean they're height phobic. So while I can see a little bit of why they would complain about that hypocrisy, they might be taking those statements hyper literally. When what they mean is they're going to be trying to be size inclusive to everybody, not just size 2s, and that's good, of course. But, I mean, you can't then expect them to have literally every possible size of everything they sell. Well, I guess you can expect that. You're just not being reasonable. Unfortunately, this original creator did kind of cave to the backlash and issue an apology. I don't think he should have apologized, one, because I don't really think he did anything that wrong, and two, because an apology never helps in these situations. It just kind of feeds the frenzy and often makes the woke mobs even more mad for some reason. But what do you guys think about this whole saga? I mean, do you have sympathy for any of these fat activists who are upset, or do you feel bad for this guy, or do you even think he was right to apologize? Let me know in the comments. I do want to hear from you, even if you disagree with me, and don't forget to hit that like button, and please do consider subscribing. Now, before we take a break for a few days, I'll read a couple of your comments from the last episode. One person writes, "You can't say the N-word or yell fire in a crowded area. Free speech is not absolute." I don't really know what you're talking about there, my friend. You can say the N-word. Now, if you're not a black person, you shouldn't, but it's not illegal, and it never can or will be under the First Amendment. And the whole "you can't yell fire in a crowded theater" thing is kind of a misnomer and a myth. It comes from dicta in a judge's opinion in a Supreme Court case where they were actually upholding blatant acts of censorship of journalists who criticized the military draft. And it's not a legally binding part of Supreme Court precedent. You also actually can yell fire in a crowded theater if there's a fire. It's just kind of a nonsense talking point and doesn't really mean anything or make the point that people seem to think it makes. Another person says, "I already signed up and supported FIRE. Way cool that you're a part of it." Yeah, I do a little bit of work with them, and you can check out FIRE's Instagram page to see the videos that I do in collaboration with them. I'll put a link in the description. Another person said, "Brad, thank you for making me feel normal by not being a part of the alphabet," which I think he means the LGBTQ plus Wi-Fi password community. He says, "If you haven't spoken out about why we don't need to be on the left, I would really appreciate it if you would." I have spoken out about this in great detail. You should check out my Damage Control podcast that I do. It's also available on this channel where I cover LGBT issues. But the short version is that gay people are individuals and they can make up their own mind on everything from economics to political philosophy to foreign policy to social issues. We are not NPCs who one aspect of our identity and our lives has to determine our entire worldview. And anyone who thinks otherwise is actually being kind of regressive and homophobic. Another person writes, "Brad agreeing with Michael Knowles and the far left," and on this I presume he means about the new anti-Semitism law. "You know this is a bad law." Yeah, I'll give you that one. If Michael Knowles and I, and also far leftists, all agree on something, there's probably some there because we have very different perspectives on the world. All right, everybody, that's it for today's show. Thanks so much for tuning in and this series, helping me get this series off the ground. I'm loving it. I'm enjoying it so much. Don't forget to hit that like button. Maybe share the show with somebody who might like it. It's one of the best ways that these kinds of things can grow. And don't forget to subscribe and stick around. I'm so close to 120,000 subscribers, and I can't wait to hit that benchmark with you. With that, I'll talk to you all next week. Remember, no shows on Monday or Tuesday. Sorry, but I will be back at it on Wednesday, and I can't wait to talk to you then.